As a teacher who is trying to engage an inclusive pedagogy, one is in a position of vulnerability, one is in a position of humility, because you're always minimizing what we know is the historical dominant position, whether that be, well, it is Anglo, heteronormative, industrialized country of a particular middle class. I mean, all these things that we're keeping in mind have to be questioned constantly. And so the challenge is, how do I engage all of my students in the same classroom without necessarily putting them at odds against each other? I think a lot of our students have found that in a McAllister classroom.
It gives me pause when I'm talking in class, for instance, knowing that I should be totally above board using proper language and catching myself a word or two ahead of time and wondering if words that I'm going to choose are hurtful in class. Far too often the people that they may be hurtful to are also people who typically don't want to say anything about it. And that's a problem, because they're the people that you least wish to bother with.
The experience of what you call exclusive language is always going to be there because we've learned it. It's something that we bring with us as an experience and something that we really have to relearn. If you're using certain languages, certain phrases, certain ideas, there's something that you learned before you got here. Something that you may have learned before you got to McAllister. So the idea that you are excluding people is not even an awareness that a lot of people have. So it is something that we have to learn.
One of the most important things we can do to enhance learning in the classroom is to engage in relationship building among people in the classroom. Getting to know my students one-on-one to know what could be the inhibitors or the enhancers for their participation is really important.
We want people to feel comfortable to be totally present, which means they have to be emotionally available at all times as opposed to being shut down. For me, the best way to have that is I need to know, and everybody else in the room needs to know, what is going on with everyone. I've been doing a check-in every class that I teach for the last 8 years that I've been at McAllister. During that moment, at least everyone's voice gets heard about what their name is and what's going on with them for that moment. So as we move forward into the classroom, whatever work it happens to be, everybody knows what's going on with everyone collectively. Through the course of a semester, it's amazing how those bonds are built between the students and myself because we've heard and understood each other fully. The language that we use then becomes a natural outgrowth of the respect that we have for each other. And once you see them in the space, it's amazing how people then all of a sudden learn each other in a different way.
I do know at some point I realized it was both exhausting and ineffective to pretend that I had all the answers.
I try to be extremely vulnerable myself in a classroom scenario. I've tried to show my students my background is complicated. I make a lot of mistakes. I'll happily show you when I have blundered, and then you can perhaps feel more comfortable to share with us when you've made blunders.
People are interested and willing, which I think they are. I think we have to assume good intent, and we have to assume that we have shared goals for providing space to maximize people's learning environments, and the extent to which things happen in class that compromises the effectiveness of the learning environment, I think is something that we're all motivated to figure out how to change.
So for professors that have a way of teaching, how do they adjust their teaching is going to be on an individual basis. For me, I would love to come in and talk to them. I would love to be able to have a colloquium of professors together to say, how do we do this? Because I don't think that we know, and we need to really come together to have what even might be for us a safe place for us to talk about how to do it. So we're not being judged, but we can also be forthright and open about how hard this is.
Whether or not we understand the power of our words, we still use them.
So, what kind of impact do you want to make?
More than words. Your voice, your choice. Whether or not we understand the power of our words, we still use them. So what kind of impact do you want to make?